We are 2 days from Game 1 of the NBA Finals, and so let's do an all-finals edition of What If. Here we go, Monica. First one. What if Jayson Tatum wins Finals MVP? Then what?
Man, he will be quieting all of the noise. Shh. Just put all the respect on his name that he would deserve. He answers the call. He moves into the hierarchy of Celtics great when such a prideful organization. It would mean, obviously, that he's efficiently scoring the basketball, and it's probably going to mean that he's had a defensive mark on this series, given the firepower on the other side.
Alan, same question.
Yeah, I completely agree. We can't say a damn thing about him anymore because he's accomplished everything that we have set as far as the standard goes for him. That is the beginning of it. But, of course, what we'll do now is wonder how many more championships the Celtics can win and see if he can do it.
Actually, I'm going to, Matt, it was our new director today. I'm going to do something that for the first time that you've been on our show. I'm stopping our segment, and I want to get into this a little bit more because we touched on this earlier, and I think it is an interesting question. Because what happens if he wins Finals MVP? Obviously, hoopla, celebration, that's easy. What happens if they win and he doesn't? We touched on that earlier, and obviously it's been a topic on a lot of talk shows, and it just occurred to me how I think we should approach this. Jayson Tatum is competing with two different collections of people. He's competing with the current NBA players, which can be the only thing on his mind. So if they win the championship and he isn't the best player, then that's fine for him. I'm sure he'll be just as happy as he would be otherwise. He'll be one of the best players in the league as he continues to be first-team All-NBA, and that'll be great. However, what I think is at stake for him if he does win Finals MVP is where it would put him in the competition with the ghosts that he also chases, which is to say, when you are as good as he is, when you are as highly touted as he was coming out of Duke, and you put that jersey on, everyone immediately says, oh, can he be the next Bird? Can he be the next Havlicek? Can he be the next Russell, Cousy, Paul Pierce, whoever it is you want to mention? If he wins Finals MVP, then I think that enters that conversation because that's what those guys were. Those guys won championships and were the definitive reason their teams won championships. And if you're going to be one of the great Celtics, if we're going to put you in a category with Larry Bird someday, then you're going to have that trophy as well. That I think, is a reasonable way of distinguishing between his being the MVP and not. You look to me like you're not buying it.
No, it's just we skipped a bunch of chapters. But I get where you're going.
What chapter did we skip?
Went right to the back of the book.
The chapter, well, obviously we're assuming that they win, but I think a Finals MVP and a single championship into the lore of Celtics, right? I mean.
He joins Paul Pierce.
Right.
Stop.
I was like Larry Bird?
Kevin Garnett, stop. When you talk about Bird and Havlicek and especially Russell, that's a whole other world. These are guys that won multiples. Bird was there almost every year. This is, for Tatum, it's just getting to this point now at least lets him in the room with the all-time greats.
So don't get me wrong.
Celtic
in the same way that I'm not saying Anthony Edwards today is comparable to Michael Jordan, what I'm saying is that it would legitimize
Starts a new conversation?
Jayson Tatum as being, could he become one of the true Celtic greats?
Okay, so it starts a new conversation.
If you're going to do a Mount Rushmore of all-time great Celtics, he's not on it. He's not that close to being on it. If you win a championship and a Finals MVP, and you put up the numbers this guy, sometimes the numbers he puts up are diminished. Go find me the seasons that John Havlicek had that compare to this. Go find me the seasons Larry Bird had that compare to the numbers he's putting up right now. Look, Larry Bird is one of the 10 greatest players that ever lived. Havlicek is probably the most underappreciated immortal in the history of the league. Jayson Tatum is that level of good. He just doesn't have any of the hardware that legitimizes all of it. And what I'm saying is, if he wins the championship, you know how many Finals MVPs Larry Bird won? 2. It's not like he won 10. He won 2. He won 3 championships and was the MVP of 2 of them. Cedric Maxwell was the MVP of the other. I'm not saying this would make him Larry Bird. I'm saying it would legitimize that projection for his career, which I feel like has been there since the moment he put that uniform on.
So as we're waiting for the finals, we tie in all of the things that we've talked about to get to this moment. I think you're right, Greeny, in that, right? He's 26 years old. He would be on track to potentially earn another Finals MVP and bring the Celtics another championship. But also, as we look down the stretch of the last 6 seasons, we're in a place in the NBA in terms of parity and dominance. We had this conversation. Do we believe that there's another dynasty out there, right? And so I think you gotta attach the two of those, because they could have a really great year and Jayson Tatum could answer all of the calls that people have, or all of the questions that people have had about him, and it may not still equal weight. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm going to get Nick in here, but Hembo, I'm giving you another assignment. He already got the last one done. I'm giving you another one. How many Celtics were on the All-NBA first team more than 3 times? Because the number's not going to be as big as you think it is. That is a hard thing to do. We talk Jayson Tatum. Well, he's been first team All-NBA 3 years. No, hold on. He's been first team All-NBA 3 times. He's 26 years old. Yeah. That is an extraordinary start to a career. And because his teams have been so good and he got so good quickly, we sometimes act like he has underachieved relative to his accomplishments. Neek, get in here.
Yeah, I think the dynasty question is what matters. And I think Monica's right that it seems like we're in an era where there aren't very many dynasties in basketball. But if there is going to be one, it's going to be the Celtics organization that has shown the ability to remake a winner after winner and then make tweaks to make teams that are really good even better. And then they're also in an East that does not show any promise to be any legitimate competitors outside of the Celtics. So I think that makes this finals for Jayson Tatum like a pivotal point in like NBA history. If they win this championship, then there's no conversation of making more tweaks. There's no conversation of breaking up the roster. There's conversation of how many more can they win. And we know that Brad Stevens and Joe Mazzulla is going to continue to get better as a coach, but we know that Brad Stevens is going to be able to put the right pieces around them going forward. So I do think this finals is one of the most interesting and exciting NBA finals we had in a long time, because all that's on the line, and we haven't even talked about what could happen if Luka happens to win a championship.
Well, that's the point. One of these two guys could lay claim to this being their league, at least for the moment. Well, what difference does it make if you're the finals MVP? In the moment, maybe not that much. But that guy Hembo and I over there, we write books about sports history. When you go back and write about this stuff, when context has dissipated, if Michael Jordan had been the MVP of 3 of the 6 championship finals that they won, we would look at it differently. He was the finals MVP in all 6 of their titles. That's a huge part of the reason that he is, well, he's the greatest player of all time, at least in my opinion. That stuff does matter when we start putting people into historical perspective.
Yeah, and I think what Monica said and why, like, what you're saying isn't crazy, but it's just very premature. He still has to win this one. Like, let's start here. And we don't know, and I don't believe they're going to win this one. I don't think they're going to. I think Dallas is winning this. We also have to, though, when it comes to Celtic history, let's remind ourselves they've had one title in almost 40 years. Let's also point that part out. They haven't had a lot of winning when it comes to championships like we were used to when Larry Bird and Bill Russell were the best players on that team. So let's start there. Let's get that, and then we can move forward with that conversation of what's next.
And there's Hembo. So you're talking about 4 Celtics in history, and the people of Bob Cousy, Larry Bird, John Havlicek, and Bill Sharman. You're talking about 4 of the greatest players. Sharman, obviously, is a product of a generation. Well, so is Cousy. They played so long ago that many NBA fans of the moment may not know who they are. By the way, you may be saying, where's Bill Russell? Wilt Chamberlain was on all those first-team All-NBA.
And they went center, right? They didn't do it like
back in those days when it wasn't positionless. So what I'm trying to say is clearly Russell would belong in the conversation of greater Celtics than, candidly, than anyone. All I'm saying is, to what you just said, yes, he has to win it. For this conversation to take effect, he has to win it, and he has to be the finals MVP. That's the premise that I'm setting up. If he does that, then we're not even talking about, well, is he better than Luka? Is he better than that? I think we're now talking about, is he going to make it run at being one of these Celtic immortals?
One of the all-time greats.
These are royalty in the history of the sport.
And he's a draft pick, so he's a homegrown Celtic. This is all important to this because, you know, if you think about the Garnett, when they won the championship, that team was built through trades. That was one of the great trades you make. Instant championship. So he wasn't homegrown, although, of course, they do claim him now. But because he's drafted, much like the guys before him, including, of course, Larry Bird, then you become a little bit more of a legacy kind of player. And what you'd expect also once he signs this $330 million contract, he will play his whole career with the Celtics, which I also think is important. That 0 going up in the rafters, right? Going up in the rafters, especially you put a ring on your finger and carry that finals MVP.
Let me try and put this a different way. His numbers, if you just put up his numbers early in his career, with no other context, if you took out winning and everything else, they will compare favorably to the numbers of practically any player who ever wore that uniform. And what I'm saying is the reason they are to some degree invalidated by so much of the conversational public is because he doesn't have the two things we're talking about, which is a championship and a finals MVP. If he wins the title and he's the best player and the reason they do it, then I think everything about his career looks different.
I agree with you. At 26 years old, and I think this is sort of the heavy is the head that wears the crown, the burden of being a Celtic, right? You're right. In isolation, if we looked at those numbers, you'd be like, bet, Jayson Tatum, 3-time All-NBA, that's fantastic. But because they have not gotten over the hump, and because, frankly, Greeny, they've been close. They've tantalized their fan base. They've been really close and just not been able to get it done.
Would you prefer to have him or Luka Doncic? They're both about the same age going forward for the rest to build your franchise with. Which player?
Are we going to break right now? Do we have It's a terrible question.
Domonique, final word. Nick, go ahead.
It's not a hard question to answer.
It's a tough question.
Nah, I mean, I think the obvious answer to that question is Luka. But I think the most important thing of this conversation is that there's no team better positioned than the Celtics to win. If they win this year, to win a few in a row. And then Jayson Tatum gets those opportunities at multiple championships, multiple finals MVPs, and then he does enter into that conversation with those Celtics all-time greats. And we were talking about greatest trades of all time. Hahn just reminded me of one of those great trades. Aren't Tatum and Brown both a result of the trade with the Nets to get rid of those aging superstars? That might be one of the greatest trades of all time, considering what they've put together right now.
The Celtics traded back from 1 to 3 and took Jayson Tatum. That's one of the great heists of all time.